With, I hope you all aren't disappointed in my reporting of what's happening at the legislature and on Measure 110 and all, because everything is still up in the air. So this is going to be a mid-session. Here's what we know so far. With regard to who I am and how long I've been here, I started in the DA's office on January 31, 1990. I celebrated 31 years in this office this past January. I was born and raised in Oregon, came to Eugene to go to the U of O in 1981, graduated in 85, worked at the legislature for the last 2 terms of my senior year, and then was hired to work there after a brief stint in Portland until I started law school in 1986. And my time at the legislature was enough to convince me that I was not interested in politics. So I came down back to Eugene, went to law school, and clerked for a judge, and was offered a position in the DA's office, told get out after 2 years or you'll be a lifer, and it turns out he was right. So here I am. I had no intention of being the elected official ever in my career. I was going to retire as the chief deputy, but you know, things happen, and you get what someone has called me an accidental leader, and here I am. As we go through this, I hope you will ask questions and engage in conversation, because I really, that's the one thing I miss about live meetings is, well, here I'm going to open the chat so maybe I can see things. Whether or not the enforcement. Okay, well, so the first question is about OSHA. Roll with that. We've had nothing's been referred to my office. I have had no involvement in enforcement with regard to any mask orders, social distancing, opening and closing of businesses. I've had absolutely no involvement in that. Would Lane County be interested in pushing back against Kate Brown on the far-reaching emergency bills restricting businesses from who they can do business with, and of course keeping all the state and county buildings being locked off to the public? Well, the public buildings are open to the public, and the only difference has been our lobby was closed in the afternoons, but open in the mornings, and we were here in the office present. If somebody showed up with the lobby door closed, we would still answer the door and conduct business. With regard to what the other issues related there, I'm hoping that we are past the worst of that now that we are down into the low risk. I understand that we've been put on warning that that could change in a couple of weeks, but I don't think the county administration is going to take a position in opposition, as the county administrator and human resources and the other department heads have been very, well, they've created new administrative procedures manual rules with regard to dealing with COVID and workplace, the workplace situation. I think my department and the sheriff are the only ones that everyone is working in the office full time. So I would not say Lane County would be pushing back. All right, so I was asked specifically to address a couple of bills at the legislature, starting with Senate Bill 401. There were actually, that one relates to Measure 11. Senate Bill 401 is the one introduced by Senator Brzezinski. There also is a bill introduced at the request of Governor Brown, and another House Bill 2002, all of those dealing with, well, 401 and Governor Brown's bill were just to revert Measure 11 to guideline sentences. Senate Bill 2 or House Bill 2002 was a very large package that dealt with way more issues than just Measure 11. It also dealt with community corrections and all. I can tell you all of those bills have had work sessions, so all of those bills are alive currently. We just passed the deadline that if a bill had not had a work session in its its chamber of origin, so if it's a House bill that hadn't had a work session in the House, or if it was a Senate bill, hadn't had a work session in the Senate, those bills are dead. We're coming up on another deadline next week, where if they haven't gotten through the policy committee to move out to the floor in their chamber of origin, then those bills will be dead as well. But when we say dead, we don't really mean dead, because what's happening now is if something didn't get a work session or any action on it, they're doing what you call gut and stuff. So we'll take a dead measure and insert it into a live measure. And so I can't, that's why I'm coming up with this. I may be very disappointing to you in announcing what's going on, because we are at gut and stuff right now. And so anything that was purportedly dead can still be resurrected. House Bill 2002 has been changed completely, and I have no idea what it's going to look like on the other side. But there is a recognition that if Measure 11 is to be eliminated, which is mandatory minimum sentences for violent crimes, that they need a 2/3 majority of the chamber in order to pass that. So I would expect that at the conclusion, there will be some version of that that comes out of the legislature. So what does that mean for Measure 11? It means we would be reverting to guideline sentences. And the sentencing guidelines, I don't have my grid in front of me, it's a grid that is based upon what the Criminal Justice Commission says the appropriate sentence is for a crime that was committed. Statutorily, a Class A felony can be punishable by up to 20 years in prison, Class B by 10 years in prison, Class C by 5 years in prison with matching fines, and then misdemeanors have something less than a year in prison. So it's county jail. So there will be, in the end, I don't know if the guideline sentence bill is going to pass. The House Bill 2002 measure was to find that the presumptive sentence is the Measure 11 sentence, but that the court could take the person out of Measure 11. That already exists for your second degree offenses, assault in the second degree, robbery in the second degree, but this would make it apply to all of those. So basically, I'm sure confusing you about what all of this means, but ultimately, I think by the end of the session, there will be no mandatory minimums for violent offenses. I was asked about House Bill 2510, the gun storage bill. That one too has had a work session, and so it's still viable. I don't know where it's going to go from there. My reading of the bill is that for failing to put a gun lock, one of those zip tie things, the trigger lock, or storing it as the measure suggests, would be a Class C violation, punishable by up to $500 unless it got into the hands of a child, which is a Class A violation, punishable by up to $2,000. It's interesting to me that the example given as to why this bill was needed was a gun that was stored in a safe, and a child knew how to get it out of the safe and used the gun to commit suicide, which of course is a tragic incident, but I don't think that the parent in that circumstance would have violated this law. So I don't know where that one's headed. I was asked about the filing fee bill. Bob Sigmund was listening to Bill London on KPNW. Apparently he was talking about the filing fee bill. That bill required the counties to pay to file charges on behalf of the state, to file charges in state court. It was just a cost shift from the state to the counties to cover the cost of technology in the courtrooms. And I will be the first to tell you that technology in the courtrooms is terrible and it should be adequately funded, but shifting it to the counties to pay for is just another unfunded mandate. Representative Marty Wilde, who represents portions of Lane and Lynn County, up the University of Oregon area and up into Lynn County, wrote a letter to Commissioner Trieger and Commissioner Buck saying he was supporting that measure because the county pays a supplement to my salary and allows money in my budget to go to the Oregon District Attorneys Association. And that in his opinion, the Oregon District Attorneys Association, ODAA, and me personally are opposed to criminal justice reform. And so the county should consider not funding portion of my salary or allow my attorneys to get training inexpensively for continuing legal education because ODAA pays for a lobbyist. Fortunately, Commissioners Buck and Trieger sent a letter back to Representative Wilde telling him essentially to mind his own business, that the state had foisted off enough expenses to the county, that the state didn't adequately fund the district attorney's salaries for a living wage, and that they used to pay for some of the deputies, well, they used to pay for all the deputies and foisted all that off on the counties over time, and that county money going to ODAA was no different than going to AOC, the Association of Oregon Counties, who also have a lobbyist to lobby on behalf of Oregon counties. Well, you'd think that would have put Representative Wilde in his place, but instead he wrote a follow-up letter saying, well, I don't think you should belong to AOC either. The consequence of that was that AOC leadership got a hold of that email string. ODAA did, and there was a lot of backpedaling at the legislature from the legislative leaders in response to that very inappropriate correspondence from Representative Wilde. So anyway, moving on from that, the filing fee bill is dead. I'm very happy to announce that, although again, they could gut and stuff it somewhere else, but as of now, it's dead. I was asked to address what scares me coming out of the legislature. I can tell you, I really miss the days where our legislature only met every other year instead of every year, because it is an insurmountable task to keep up with the number of bills that are getting introduced every year and the changes that are proposed without thought to how that interplays with the rest of law. You know, people who have a great idea get legislative counsel to write up the bill for it without any thought to how it impacts everything else that everybody else is doing. This may mean nothing to you. What really scares me is this notion that money that comes to support the county and the programs that we do here, our treatment courts, our prison diversion program, these are programs that actually work for property offenders, drug addicts, and all. That 20% of the Justice Reinvestment Initiative money is being, according to one of the bills, funneled to some organization up in the Portland area that deals with Portland and Southwest Washington, and that they'll be responsible for determining how that 20% of the money is going to get distributed in the state. That another $2.5 million of state money is going to that organization to determine how it's going to be spent. when we have programs here that are inadequately funded, that are actually working. And so to have money funneled out of these programs is disingenuous and dangerous for our community, actually, because those programs, if we can't support them financially, are going to go away. We're going to go back to the situation where we just let people amass criminal histories to the point that we send them off to prison without any intervention or supervision. They come back to the community without any intervention or supervision, and crime just gets worse. So I don't know where that's going to go. I don't know what's driving it. You know, they're talking about reducing the prison population more. It's already at the lowest point since 2004, while the population in Oregon has grown dramatically based upon commutations, a lot of those in response to COVID. I just got another list of people who are being considered for commutation from COVID from the governor's office. And I asked her staff member who sent that list why we're still getting COVID commutations when the director of the Department of Corrections had testified at the legislature that every adult in custody with the Department of Corrections who wanted a vaccine has had access to it and has been vaccinated, and that they've got the virus outbreaks under control. And so I don't know why we're still getting these commutation lists from the governor's office where they don't take into consideration the community's ability to absorb these people. Sponsors is a great program. I think the work that they do to help people re-enter from prison, these are people who are going to be coming back to our community anyway. To provide support through sponsors is a terrific thing, but they don't have the capacity to take the number of people who are being returned to our community all at once. And so while people are complaining about a lack of housing in the community and the number of people who are living in tents around here, to just release people without a place to go is not, it's not good for those people, it's not good for the community. So that's what scares me, looking at what's happening right now. And what's happening with the legislature. So, you know, and I have said all along, my office will always follow the law. Whatever the legislature does, we will follow the law, but it's not always in the community's best interest. And so my job is to try to educate people about that and spur people to action if there are concerns that you have about what's happening in our community or what's happening at the legislature. We all represent you. Notify your legislators about the concerns you have and the things that you think should be handled differently. And it starts at the local level. This sort of leads me into my Measure 110 rant, which Ballot Measure 110 was the greatest marketing scam that has ever been given to a voting populace. I mean, who wouldn't support treatment for drug addiction over jail? Of course, everyone would support treatment over jail. What Measure 110 did, though, was completely decriminalize possession of serious controlled substances, methamphetamine, cocaine, and it wasn't even written to address the fentanyl problem. So now, at a time when we already have a huge homeless population situation and all of these people living in tents, and you watch the number of tents in our community growing, at a time when people can't be evicted from their residences, that means more people are coming into the community. No one's being evicted right now. So all of that increase in number of people unhoused in our community, living in these tent populations around the county, are coming here. And why would somebody come to Lane County or the state of Oregon without housing lined up, without employment lined up. Well, it's early. Measure 110 has only been around for a couple of months now. But if you were inclined to want to use controlled substances and there's a place where you're not going to go to jail for doing that, why wouldn't you go there? And so I'm waiting for, because it didn't make drugs free. Measure 110 did not make drugs free to people who want to use them. They still have to pay their drug dealer, who is profit motivated and now has a target rich environment for sales. So, you know, the quantities are going to go up coming into the community, but they're still not free. And so someone who doesn't have a job, doesn't have a place to live, who's addicted to drugs, is not going to say, oh, well, I don't have any money right now, so I'm not going to buy drugs right now. That person is an addict. And so they will break into cars and homes and businesses to support the addiction. And so Measure 110, which was supposed to get everybody into treatment, of course, does not provide for any treatment. It does not provide treatment to people, and it doesn't provide a mechanism for enforcing people to go into treatment, even if we had an order in there to go to treatment. What it does is tells the person who, or legislates that the person who gets cited for possession of drugs, which is a Class E violation now, has the choice of going to an assessment to determine whether they need drug treatment, or they can pay a fine. And the maximum fine, it doesn't say the fine for this is $100. That's the maximum fine. And when there's no minimum fine set, the minimum fine is going to be, well, first you go back to the base fine. The base fine is 20% of the maximum fine. So that would be $20. And the minimum fine would be 20% of that, which is $4. So if you are a drug addict and you go to the state of Oregon and you have a choice of a $4 fine or going to an assessment center, I mean, the odds are good that you're not going to pay the $4 or show up to the assessment center, but there's no consequence for the failure to do either of those things. And so I hope, I keep saying, I hope I am really wrong and that everybody is going to want to come here to get great treatment and cooperate with that and voluntarily say, I want to stop using drugs. But the truth of the matter is, the science that we have behind that is that it takes something bigger to get somebody to determine that not using drugs is better than using drugs. We have what we call our Senate Bill 416 program, which ironically, Senate Bill 416 didn't even pass. I don't know why we call it that, but it's a prison diversion program for people who commit property crimes or repeat property offenders, to get them under control. Intensive supervision, drug treatment is mandated. They get all the support in the world that a person could need to be successful if they were so inclined to be successful. But at the start of that, the person spends 60 days in jail. And Public Defender was pushing back that 60 days was too much. And what we discovered that anything less than 60 days, the person walked from treatment or ran every single time. But if they spent that 60 days in, even at 59 days, one person was 59 days and ran, but every person who spent the 60 days in jail successfully completed treatment and went and finished the program. And so there's something magical about being clean for that amount of time. That's the base minimum of what it takes to get somebody to want to stop using drugs and cooperate with treatment. And our treatment programs, we don't really use jail, particularly now during COVID, as a sanction. But to get people engaged in the program, you have to keep at them, and there has to be a consequence, even if it's a sit sanction or whatever other sanctions the court has access to, and carrots and sticks to get people to complete the program. But when people complete that program, our recidivism rate is about 10% for people who complete treatment court, which is fantastic because all the other, not 416, but people who have traditional probation, the recidivism rate is between 40 and 50%. And so these programs are terrific and they work, but you don't get people just go into treatment voluntarily. There has to be a reason to get engaged. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't people who hit rock bottom on their own, don't come to the attention of the criminal justice system and go into treatment on their own. That does happen, but it's really rare. Addiction, particularly opioids and methamphetamine, are really hard to overcome, and that's who our treatment courts are designed to address, are those super high risk, high needs people. So then I stopped reading the chat because I was just on my high horse. Is it possible that my office could send out a newsletter or alert when Lane County is getting unfunded mandates pushed onto the counties by the legislature or the governor? We can help you. So the counties, the Oregon Association of Counties actually has initiated some lawsuits with regard to unfunded mandates. And so that has had some impact. But, you know, I don't know about what goes out publicly about that. I will certainly talk to Devin, is our public information officer, and I'll ask her what the likelihood is that there will be more focus put on that. What we're finding is that the media is less inclined. I mean, the Register Guard will publish a press release sometimes, but the media is less interested in actually contacting and getting information and doing real journalism. If it's not a story that's going to, you know, invite more clicks, because the most news media is, particularly what used to be print journalism, is based on how many people are looking at it. So it's really hard. I mean, I've personally tried to get information out to the public, and unless it's a subject that resonates with a particular TV news station or the Guard, that it's going to generate a lot of interest, then it's ignored. Let's see if there's anything else in there. Oh, that's the last. Oh, rioters, arsonists, and looters in Portland, the city's favorite recreational activities, know they won't be prosecuted even if arrested. A number of culprits from the May riots in Eugene have been arrested. Will they be prosecuted? Yes, indeed, they have been prosecuted. During COVID, you know, it's been hard to get cases into court, and people have been getting cases resolved for less than the community might think is normally acceptable. But in order to keep cases moving through the system and make sure that they're not on the other side so stale that we can't go forward on them, or that the defendant would have a speedy trial violation claim to make, we have resolved some of these cases for less than you probably would like, but we are making an effort to hold everyone that there is sufficient evidence to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. Those charges are being filed, and we've had a number of those cases go through. Yeah, this is not a place where property crime doesn't matter. Property crime matters a lot. I can tell you it's going to get worse here, and we will do everything we can to prosecute every provable case. Um, how will the gun bill you speak of ever be enforced? No idea. I imagine the only way it would be enforced is if there was a tragedy that happened and it came to the attention of law enforcement. We'll be losing or giving up our Fourth Amendments if the trigger lock bill should actually become law in Salem. I don't see the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution ever going away. In fact, there have been more cases, particularly in Oregon, where the restrictions on law enforcement in using the Fourth Amendment have increased. So I don't think you have to worry about law enforcement doing sweep searches for trigger locks or gun safes. Please tell me that Lane County is not following some other lawless counties in other states. No money bail, including illegal immigrants. Well, I'm going to tell you, I am opposed to money bail. So if you don't like that, I'm sorry, but I don't think that a person should be held in custody because they don't have sufficient resources to get out. And so only the people, and it doesn't matter how bad their crime was, if you have money, you can post and get out. And I don't think that's right. I think there should be other criteria for getting out of custody other than being able to pay your way if you are, if you're a sex offender, a sex trafficker, whatever it is. And because you have money, you get to get out of custody. Lane County has been doing risk-based releases since the late 70s because we don't have adequate jail space. And so the only time that there really is money bail being posted are on the most significant cases. And I'm opposed to that. So I'm sorry that if that doesn't resonate, but I just think that there should be other criteria for that. But I can tell you also that there have been circumstances where the court's been setting money bail super low on really violent offenders and letting people out because of this notion that we shouldn't hold people pre-trial because they haven't been convicted. If there is sufficient probable cause that somebody has committed a crime and the court has made a finding that, or a grand jury has made a finding that there's sufficient evidence that somebody committed a crime to be held, I am offended that, well, we had a judge at a release hearing say it was just one rape, right? So no, I am not somebody who thinks that money bail is a great thing. Oh, and another one was, it was just one victim, right? So that person's not a risk to the community. Let's see.
Patty, this is Steve, and I just, I want to thank you, and I don't know if you get a lot of thank yous in your line of work, but every time I hear about Portland, I just thank God in heaven that you were successful in getting reelected and are taking positions that I know must be difficult, with some people that are just opposed to that. And there are a lot of people, I imagine a lot more people are supporting you than it may seem like. But I hope, I have thought about you, and I thought, I wonder if after the last election, because Bob and I were in the debate. We weren't in it, but we were attending it. And I thought, if she would have known what was going to be happening, I wonder if she would have just thrown the election and called it good, because I can't imagine you ever knew how this was all going to, how difficult your job would be. And do you have any comments about any of that? I mean, it's
Well, I could tell you, I have not made it a secret that this is my last term. 2 contested elections were enough for me. I understand that as a public official and elected official, it is good for community engagement to have contested elections and vigorous debate. But I am not somebody who likes making phone calls, asking for money to keep my job. That's really hard for me to call people up and say, I can't give you anything in exchange for your money, but you'll get a really good DA. Could you please support my, it was it was almost $100,000 this last, in 2020. And so while I love my job and I love my community, I'm just not going to do it again. That doesn't mean I won't support my community in other ways. I don't intend to go through that again in any capacity, not even water board. No, I didn't envision that. I didn't envision that our courts would be essentially shut down, that our community would be basically, victims being held hostage. I didn't expect any of that, but I think it's good for the community that I'm here during that, because I have a lot of experience and I have great people working around me to help navigate this circumstance and make sure that we can do the best we can to enforce victims' rights and get cases moved through the system so we aren't having speedy trial violation claims at the other end of this. I've been really lucky that our presiding judge has worked with us to try to make things virtual so that we could keep things going during this time. So I would say mostly I'm very, very fortunate.
This is John Quilter, and with that disappointing news that this is your last term, are you mentoring or encouraging any of your subordinates to step up to the plate in the future, perhaps with the same types of attitudes and perspective that you have to the job?
So I am spending time on succession planning, and not just for me, but in other areas in the office where we have people that are approaching retirement, to make sure that the office is in a great position when I go. Of course, I can't stop what's going to happen in 2024, when it's very likely with an open DA seat that there will be a Soros-funded candidate here. That happened. There was an inquiry for that during 2020. Well, it's actually in 2019 that they were reaching out here and didn't find somebody to do that. So I have very high expectations that when it's an open seat, that there will be efforts to not have the same. Well, probably there's going to be a fight if it's somebody from the inside, and I do have somebody who's interested from the inside and is working to establish relationships in the community and understand the job from the bottom up like I do. I didn't lose. I gave up the chief deputy position to expand the major crimes team, because we didn't have enough lawyers on the major crimes team. And so I am now doing the job of DA and chief deputy. And so I'm hopeful that I can get the support of county administration to bring back the chief deputy position, so that would give somebody an opportunity to learn more about how this is all working, rather than my doing both jobs.
Does anybody else have a question for Patty?
Yes, Bill, I was off for a while, just managed to somehow disconnect my computer and was gone for several minutes while it booted back up. And I wanted to mention the what a positive impact the programs that you guys have now that the courts are providing with drug court and with mental health court, and you know what a productive option that has been for you know, people working on defense cases to have the ability to get these people, you know, more properly placed and given a better opportunity to succeed and not, you know, continue in their criminal patterns. And I just, you know, wanted to, you had mentioned that earlier, and you know, really support the continued funding of those things, and perhaps even, you know, an increase in funding, because they seem to do some good.
Thank you. I agree. I've tried to get a DUI court initiated here because I think, and I think statistics support it, that driving under the influence is one of the community's most dangerous crimes, even though it's just a misdemeanor until somebody's accumulated multiple convictions. Anytime somebody is behind the wheel of a car impaired, they're putting every bit of the other driver on the road at risk. And somebody who gets convicted of that, the statistics show, has operated a vehicle impaired many more times than what led to the arrest. And that providing that kind of support through a treatment court model that's specifically designed for DUI people who are addicted to alcohol or other substances and operating vehicles would have the same great outcomes. I've not received support from the court from that because it would require another docket and take another judge away from being able to do the regular court functions. Chris Wigg, who is part of the Democratic Party in Lane County, but also is one of the managers at Emergence, which provides the treatment services for our treatment courts, wrote an op-ed for the Register Guard supporting that as well. And so I think it's something that would have wide-ranging support. It's not just me. So I'm hopeful that at some point we will be able to accomplish that before I go. We also have a robust veterans court, and I have to say veterans are, once you get them engaged in the program, they are, you know, rule followers. They will show up when you tell them to, and they will be successful as long as you provide the supports they need to get through the program. And so the treatment courts are terrific here.
I've worked in cases involving all of those really valuable.
Agreed.
I
have a question.
Go ahead, Darlene.
I live in Springfield, and I recently heard that 24 of our police officers are being sued by this riot group out in East Springfield this past year. Will that be in Lane County Court? Or, I mean, it seems to me if you hit a policeman, you can expect that they're going to hit you back. And they were trying to keep those people off of the highway. I mean, that's just not Main Street. That is a state highway, 106, or 126. Keep those people off of that highway. I think they did everything they could do, and I think this is totally a travesty of justice that they're being sued.
Anybody can sue anybody for anything. The question is, does it have merit and will it be successful? I think that's headed to federal court rather than Lane Circuit Court. And, you know, the people of Springfield have been very supportive of their police department, and particularly in the levies to fund the jail and the department and all. So I know that Springfield Police is appreciative of that. They've had a number of issues recently. The city manager, who's fairly new, has been trying to navigate that and manage it, and has requested some investigations into the complaints that have been made against the city. And I can tell you with regard to the there was a lawsuit involving the use of force that led to the death of Stacy Kinney, also known as Patrick Kinney, that I have formed a work group to look at the recommendations that came from that, because I think that we always should be reflecting on, are we doing the best work we can? And so I think, you know, having the city manager bring in outside people to look at how work is being done isn't a bad thing. And I'm open to having, you know, we tried to call the person who did the report on the use of force, and of course he did call back, but he's supposed to be coming to Springfield to present the report, and I hope at some point he'll be willing to engage with us because he made some recommendations about how the IDFIT should be operating. And I want to review our policy and see if there are improvements that we can be making.
Well, when Mayor Lundberg was still the mayor, she had an independent person come up from Sacramento, I believe, and gave recommendations. So the suit, to me, I was really shocked when I heard that was happening. I understand, yeah, you can sue anybody, but it just doesn't seem like it has any merit to me.
And if it doesn't have any merit, a judge can dismiss it summarily.
Okay.
Does anybody else have a question for Patty? Because I do, if I don't want to, I've already asked a question and I don't want to just overrun people, but I'm concerned because I live out towards Veneta, and driving into town, there are homeless camps that are on West 11th at Beltline and other places, but they are living in garbage basically that must be 2 feet deep. And I don't know, with being homeless and no car, how they get all of that junk there, but they do. And or there is, I guess. And I don't think we're doing them a favor by providing them a place to live that's like really poor camping with no real facilities. They've got a Buck's toilet out there. Are there any, and I've heard, and maybe this isn't true, I've heard that if now I don't mean you, but if there isn't a place to send somebody, you can't move them along. You can't say you can't live here without having them have a place to go. Is that true? And are there any plans for how to because my house, I couldn't have 2 feet of garbage. I mean, there'd be rats. I mean, it would just, I don't understand how this can go on. Can you discuss it or?
Well, I can tell you that the city of Boise was sued in federal court for moving or arresting people for trespass on city property and for, breaking up camps. And the city of Boise lost. And the ruling says if you don't have adequate shelter, that you can't ban people from camping on public property unless there is something that outweighs their interest in camping on public property. And so we had campers down by the river, but the waste that was going into the river created a situation that it was worse to have waste going into the river than to move the campers. And so the campers got moved away from the river, but now they're everywhere else. And it doesn't matter how much money you throw at this, if more people continue to come here, we're never going to have adequate shelter available for the number of people who are here. And so you will never be able to tell people that they can't camp anywhere on any public property. You have to have an interest in preserving that property that's greater than the interest of the person to have a place to camp. So there have been allowed some restrictions in parks and all where children are likely to assemble because you don't know who is camping. There are no restrictions on sex offenders and all of that. And so they've allowed some restrictions like that. But I mean, it's a terrible, untenable situation. The city's spending a fortune cleaning up all over. And at some point, you know, they're going to have to, I don't have an answer to it. You know,
Well, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I don't understand how this can go on, because like I've got a place on the river up the McKenzie, and I'm having to spend about $19,000 on a septic tank, and it's like a space age septic tank where it's got computer controls, and yet there's people that live right by the river, like you just described, that are you know, going directly into the river, and I don't understand. It doesn't seem equal. But I guess that's just the way it is. But anyway, I didn't mean to put you in a corner. I just don't understand. I was hoping you'd say, well, yeah, Steve, they're actually considering doing da 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 da, and so that was the answer I was hoping for. I didn't mean to put you in a corner. So I know
they're changing zoning rules so that and permitting rules so that shelters can be created much more quickly, that empty motels are being, Salem has a motel that was sold to the city of Salem so that they could put people in there, but then you have to put kitchens in and all, and so they're releasing some of the permitting requirements so that can happen. But it's a fight that is never going to be won. I mean, you will never have adequate shelter for everyone so long as people keep coming.
right.
I have a question though. We've got laws that say you can't do this, but yet we allow it to happen. So are you changing all the laws to say that can be allowed?
Well, I don't change any laws. And it was a federal court that said that the laws of the city of Boise couldn't be enforced.
So then you have to change the law, right?
Or not apply it as written.
Well, then it's got to be changed. As far if it's on the books, it's a law, isn't it? Isn't it a law that says it's a law?
Well, it's still a law that can be enforced if they ever have adequate shelter.
That's right. So it shouldn't be there then if it can't be enforced.
I don't make or change law.
I